But I remember being so completely distraught when the issue with the separation of families occurred.
Mhm.
I mean, I cried. I didn't want to pay my taxes anymore because I'm like,
Yeah,
my tax money is paying for traumatizing children and traumatizing parents
yeah,
in ways that we will never be able to heal for them.
yeah.
And I was so hot under the collar. I still am, obviously, you can see. I
Mm,
still am
mm.
very unhappy about that because we still have children that have not been reunited with their families all these years later. Welcome to another episode of the Bloomburg Democrat. I'm Sally Taylor. This is my discerning younger brother, John Daniels. And we are here today to talk about a announcement that our current president made last week about using Guantanamo Bay as a holding facility for supposedly the most criminal of the people that he plans to round up to deport. I have some concerns
Yeah.
about this. John, what do you know about the situation?
Well, from what I've read, he would like to put 30,000 beds in Guantanamo Bay for holding people. There's been even conflicting comments from the Trump group. Like, I don't remember who it is, but Noam, somebody Noam, I believe, is that the name of the person who said that there's going to be they're going to preserve due process. There's going to be everything's going to be done above board. But that's not really what we use Guantanamo Bay for. Um,
Right.
and furthermore, then Trump is saying that this is where we're going to send the worst of the worst, the people who he doesn't even trust to send back to their own country, because then they're just going to turn around and come back. And
Right.
so he doesn't want to send them to their own country, he says, but then there's supposed to be due process, but he's going to send them to Guantanamo Bay, which is where we send people to ignore due
Without due
process.
process. Right.
Yeah. I just don't believe any of it, really. I mean, I guess I
Right.
believe that they're going to start sending people there. And then there was no comment given on whether or not like children and mothers would be sent there as well, which just means that yes, they will be, right?
Right.
Because
Exactly.
if the answer was no, you would say no. You wouldn't
Exactly.
ignore the question.
Right. No, I have deep concerns about that. And you're right. Guantanamo Bay has always been used as a place to hide people away
Right,
and not give them due process. We know
right.
we have had people there who were innocent of what they were supposedly accused of, who
Well, the
remained there for
terrorists. Yeah,
years.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
before
The
they
terrorist
were,
groups.
oh, yeah, well, maybe you weren't a part of that. We'll let you go 5 years
Right,
later.
right. Your country just sent you to us because they didn't want you anymore. You were undesirable.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
yeah,
So, yeah, I have deep concerns. I have concerns because it is offshore.
yeah,
It's not visible to most Americans. And
yeah,
what Americans don't see, they don't care about. They don't know
yes,
about.
yeah,
And that's why I wanted to tie this into previous history with the Trump administration. When Trump came into office the first time around, within a couple of months, they were separating children from their parents at the border.
yeah,
They started in El Paso and then expanded.
right,
The only reason that stopped was because Americans were aware of it. They went to the locations where this was happening and they screamed about it
yeah,
and said that it was horrific.
yeah,
And so that policy was finally reversed.
yeah,
We have still scores of children who have not been returned to their families, still.
mm,
And not only that, but sometimes the children that were rounded up were American citizens.
Yeah.
and their parents were deported and they were left without their family and
Yeah.
no way to reconnect to their family. So I really have deep concerns that this is about to repeat itself, not only just with children and families, but the kind of atrocities that they attempted in the first round are going to happen again, but outside of Americans' view.
Yeah. 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 Well, I agree with you. I think it's going to happen too. Um, I've been pretty shocked by the reports of Native Americans who have been detained
Detained. Right.
and required to provide documentation stating that they are Americans, which is
Right.
just ridiculous. And the
Right.
reports that you read about this, it's kind of like the Latin Americans are the new Jews, basically. Like
Yes.
it's terrifying for them, I think, at this point.
Yes. I agree. And that it is, and it's not new with with this particular leadership.
Right.
Of course, they've been spreading essentially racist tropes from the beginning
Yeah.
and really working to convince the American people that brown people, number one, shouldn't be here to begin with, and
Right.
number two, that they're the source of all of our problems,
Right.
as opposed to the actual, workforce and contributor
Right.
that they have largely been. Are there criminal elements? Yes, but at a lower rate than there are among American citizens.
Yeah. Yeah. Most crime would be done by the people who are residents, and then they're from here, right?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
because people who
The
are
majority of
here and
people are here legally, so the majority of crimes are going to be committed by legal people.
right, but at a higher percentage too.
Yeah.
So it's not like immigrants are committing crimes at a higher rate
Right.
than citizens because they're here undocumented.
Mhm.
They don't want to stir up trouble.
Yeah,
They're
they
looking
typically.
not to be noticed, right?
Yes. Yes.
They just want to work and help their families
Yeah, right. They
and
send most of the
live a
money
better life.
back to their families and stuff.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So they're far less likely to commit crimes because they don't want to be deported. They don't want to
Exactly.
become, enmeshed in the system.
Yeah.
And so they tend to keep their noses clean on
Right.
average.
Right.
Again, there's exceptions, and there are certainly people here who are here for criminal reasons, right?
Yeah.
Drugs and, some of the other things that happen.
Well, we already have prisons where we can put these people for
Exactly.
a much lower cost than it would cost to send people to Guantanamo Bay. Like, I'm sure the
Yes.
costs that are going to be involved here, it'll be astronomical. Like, just to incarcerate one person in Guantanamo must cost so much more than it would to incarcerate them in the United States.
So it brings up the question, why have we not shut down Guantanamo? Obama
Well,
said
that's
he
a
was
very
going to
good
shut it
question.
down.
Yes, I was
Biden
very
said
upset
he
with
would shut it down.
Obama not shutting it down. I didn't
Right.
even know that that was something Biden was going to do, but great, great job at not doing it.
Right. They
Yeah,
did release another big chunk of people, but I think
yeah,
there's
I've
still
read that.
something like 15 or so
Yeah,
detainees. They're not
yeah,
considered prisoners. And so that's the thing. Will the people that they send there be considered detainees, or are they considered prisoners, or what are they?
yeah,
And what's the difference besides the semantics of it?
yeah. Well, the difference is, like, did you obey the law when you incarcerated them, or did you break the law
Right.
when you incarcerated them? That's the difference.
Yeah.
So a detainee is basically just a political prisoner or of some sort, and
Right.
you're gonna be there indefinitely
Well, it's our
until.
wording that gets us around the Geneva uh, um,
Right,
Convention,
right.
right?
The
And
human
so,
rights treaties we've signed,
yes,
authored, probably.
probably. And
Yeah.
yet we say, do as I say, but not as I do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we're hypocrites.
Let's remind people a little bit about how Guantanamo Bay occurred in case they don't have memory of it. It certainly happened in our lifetime.
Well, not in
Um,
my lifetime, I don't think. I mean, if you're referring only to the 9/11 portion, then yes. But
well, yes. So its
um
usage and the way it's being used right now,
yes, well, as a prison as opposed to just like a immigrant
a
detainee
base.
center or something.
Right. Well, they had originally leased the land from Cuba
Right.
before like Castro came into power, right?
Hmm.
When then we still had something of a relationship with the Cuban government.
Right.
And so we held that lease even when Cuba became communist for
Yeah.
all practical
And they don't
purposes,
even
right?
cash our checks, right? They just return the money.
They just,
They
yes,
just
they don't
want they
even
want it
cash the
back.
checks.
They want it
Yes,
back.
they do.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, other than we like to have our bases dotted around the world,
Yeah.
why we haven't given it back, other than, well, of course, there was a Cuban Missile Crisis as well,
Right.
right? And so this idea that it's a place to kind of give us a little more of a buffer on our
Hmm.
side of in our hemisphere.
Right.
And so, I mean, I understand from a military standpoint why they were loath to let it go, but we are the greatest military power in the world.
Yeah, we've got rockets that'll shoot way farther than the
Right,
borders
Cuba.
from Cuba.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't personally uh, see a reason to not just cede it back to
Yeah, no, we
Cuba
should. We just
myself.
just give it back. I think the reason is basically they don't know what to do with the people who are there. If they bring them here and put them on trial, then I think they figure it's like a catch-22 of some sort. Like if they're convicted and go to prison for life, that's somehow a bad thing. And if they're released, then that's also a bad thing. And they just don't want either thing to happen. And so they just stay there. But it
Yeah.
doesn't make any
Well,
sense because that's what is already
they're
happening.
imprisoned for life anyway, right? So what's the
Right,
difference
right.
between imprisoning them for life or imprisoning them for life with due process? you
Yes.
know?
Well, they don't have confidence in their cases, I guess. Right?
And that may well be because, like I said, I've seen interviews of individuals who were there without actually having been guilty of what they were accused of.
Yeah.
So, but my biggest issue really truly is the atrocities. We had real problems with mistreatment of the,
Yeah.
I'm going to call them prisoners. I just,
Yeah.
the idea of saying detainees to me is it's unjustified.
Yes,
you
yes,
know,
I agree. I agree.
it really doesn't make sense.
They're not being
So
detained.
no, they're not being detained
Like,
because
because even detainment has a limit, right?
right,
When you say
right,
detainment in the United States here, like if the police are detaining you, right? Even if you're
right,
not arrested, it means they're holding on to you for a little bit. They can't do it
right,
forever, but
right,
for a little bit until they can figure out what they want to ask you or whatever, they're allowed to hang on to you from it. But that's
right.
not what is happening here. Like we've been detaining them for years and years and years, decades maybe at this point, right?
Yeah. And maintaining an entire base to do it.
Yeah,
I mean, how many millions, billions of dollars have we
yeah,
spent maintaining Guantanamo Bay?
yeah. And instead, we're going to cut U.S. aid and our foreign aid services.
Right, right,
So we
right,
don't want to help anybody anymore, but we're happy to lock you up.
right, right. And we'll
It's
spend all
weird.
the money to do it.
Yeah, it's so weird.
uh, yeah. So, I mean, there were so many things that have been occurring in these first couple of weeks
Oh
of
yeah,
Trump's being in
yeah.
office that it was like, how do you pick and choose what topic to talk about?
Oh, I'm sure
For me,
he's gonna make something worse every day for quite a while here.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and people have talked about it being kind of a shock and awe strategy to
right.
just load people with so much at one time that
Mm,
they can't deal with it, that they shut down. And it is working. I mean,
yeah,
I know a lot of people who've shut down, who've turned off the news, who've walked away from media of any kind because they can't. it's too hard for them
Yeah.
to look at
It's
on a
easier just to
daily
kind of
basis.
pretend like it's not happening because I
Yeah.
mean it doesn't affect our daily lives as white people, right?
Right. Right.
So
And so, like, because my day to day is still the same. I mean, my grocery bill may be going up a little so far, but I expect it to do more. But I'm
yeah,
okay, you
right.
know. But I remember being so completely distraught when the issue with the separation of families occurred.
Hmm.
I mean, I cried. I didn't want to pay my taxes anymore because I'm like,
Yeah,
my tax money is paying for traumatizing children and traumatizing parents
yeah,
in ways that we will never be able to heal for them.
yeah.
And I was so hot under the collar. I still am, obviously. You can see I
Mm,
still am
mm,
very unhappy about that because we still have children that have not been reunited with their families all these years later because they
yeah,
didn't have any process to do it. You
exactly.
know, they
Yeah.
just took the kids, put them in
Well,
cages,
there's no
and
plan at
then
all, and there's no plan now
none.
either.
No,
Yeah,
no, I agree.
they're
I
really just
don't even
winging
think,
it.
yeah, I don't even think they know who they're actually going to put there.
No,
You
I
know,
don't think so
it's
either.
whoever they round up.
Yeah. Well, I read another article. I think it was the same person. I want to say her name is Noam. I don't remember. I believe this is her last name. And she was out in New York and she was doing some of the police raids, I guess, with the ICE agents. They say that they're looking for, like the murderers and the thieves and all this stuff. Like, why weren't you looking for them before? Like, if they were
Right,
wanted criminals in the past, why didn't you look for
right,
them? And now we're
right.
looking for them? Like, what have we been
Exactly.
doing?
I would claim that if they're committing criminal acts and they get caught, we've always, imprisoned them. We've always
Yeah, right?
arrested them, and then run them through the court system and
Yeah,
imprison them if they committed crimes on American soil. And
yeah.
that's the thing. We have always imprisoned people. I say always. We have largely imprisoned people who committed crimes on
Oh
American
yeah.
soil into
We are
American prisons.
we are prison happy. We will put everybody in a
Right.
prison.
Well, because we have for-profit prisons,
Oh yes. Yes, of course we do. Got to make money off
which
these poor
is
people somehow.
right.
We
And
might as
how
well
do
pour
you
more of
make
them in there.
right? How do you make money on a prison without without arresting people and putting them there? And
Exactly.
so I've always felt that we have a lot of people in prison who shouldn't be, mostly for drug use.
Yeah.
I understand arresting and prosecuting people for drug sales, and some of the gang activity that happens around that. You end
Yeah,
up with a
sure,
lot of
sure, sure.
violence that occurs with that.
Yes, yes, yes.
But drug use, I don't understand at all.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me to be putting people into prison for drug use when what they really need is help.
Yeah.
They need help to
Mental
hopefully get
health
off of
care.
those drugs. Yes,
Yeah.
because drug use is about escaping what you can't cope with,
Hmm.
right?
Well, that's what
It,
they say. I don't think all drug use is about that, right?
perhaps not all. I mean, some of it certainly has healing aspects to it. I
Sure.
I am I will say out loud, I am a user of legal THC products.
I'll
I
say it's
use it
legal.
right now as a
Yeah.
medicine at
Hmm.
night to help me
Hmm.
sleep
Yeah.
because it gets rid of hot flashes.
Oh, well, nice.
Amazingly,
Yeah.
it gets
Hey,
rid of hot flashes.
hey, if it works,
So I
use
use
it.
it at night. It's the only
Yeah.
time I do, but it has made a world of difference for me and my
Yeah.
health and my sleep. So
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's for health reasons,
Yeah.
but but
I would say
I
it's often for health reasons.
yeah,
I mean, mental
but I
health
am a
is,
legal user.
is a
I've
health
never
reason as
used it
well.
illegally. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's important.
But yeah. Well, I mean, it became a possibility in the US to
Right.
obtain that legally. And so
Exactly.
once it did,
And it took a lot of work on the half of a lot
yeah.
of people to get it to that
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
So I really think that anybody who is in prison because of drug use should not be there.
Yeah, I agree. There should have just been like once it became legal, at least on the state level, we should have all the prisons should just be emptied out of
Right.
the people who are there for drug use. I agree.
Yeah. So, what do discerning, my discerning
Mhm.
younger brother, what do discerning Americans do to work against this current direction that we're headed
With Guantanamo specifically,
with
or
Guantanamo? Or even just with our treatment of anybody who has been collected by ICE agents, because it seems like there's a lot of abuses already occurring with
yeah, of
regard
course.
to American citizens at the very
Yeah,
least. But I'm always concerned about families because there's so often families that are here
yeah,
together.
yeah.
And are we going to see a separation of children again? I'm trying to think of his name. The general that worked under Trump in his cabinet,
Who?
Kelly, Kelly,
Okay.
General Kelly.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
He said outright, the point of the child separation was the trauma. That was the point. They wanted it to be a deterrent for
Right.
people coming over.
And that's also something I read that they've said now about Guantanamo as well, is it's supposed to be a deterrent. Like,
Right.
if you get picked up, you're going to be sent to Guantanamo. So don't come. It won't be worth it,
Right.
kind of a thing.
Who are we as human beings, John?
Oh,
I mean, when
well,
trauma
we're
is
human
your
beings,
point.
first of all. Human beings are not like angels like we like to imagine. Human beings are terrible creatures. We have to try to rise up and be better than what our basic instincts are leading us towards, right?
Yeah.
Like it takes a little bit of self-discipline. You have to wake up and think, I'm going to try to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. And there's a lot of shit in life. It's not easy. It's hard and it goes slow, but you take it little by little, you know? When you can, you try to you look for opportunities where you can be a better person. Find someone you can help out. Just get to know people and understand that we're all the same. And these ways that we divide ourselves are just so crazy. We're we're all human. Like we have a
Yeah.
shared experience here. Just by being born as a human, we're all the same. We are all born the same way. We all entered into the same world. And all we have to do is just realize we're all the same. And it doesn't matter what we look like, or what we eat for dinner, or what church we do or don't go to. Like, we're all just the same humans.
My problem is the hypocrisy. So we lock people up for being violent to other human beings, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
lock them up when they abuse children. We
Hmm.
lock them up when they kill other people. We lock them up when they basically do things that take away other people's
Right. When you're
human rights. And
generally when you're
yet,
hurting someone else.
right.
Yeah,
And yet we commit the same crimes as a nation.
yeah, yeah.
So I have a solution to all of this, John.
Okay,
Put
let's hear
women
it.
in charge. Put women in charge.
I don't know if that's going to be enough, because women are still human. There's a
Well,
lot of
as long
crappy
as
women out there too.
that's
There's
true.
just
That's true.
crappy people everywhere you go.
For
So,
me, I find the women that are crappy,
yeah,
and not to, you know,
are
the women
somehow
that
less
are that way.
crappy than men
Well,
who are
no,
crappy.
well, they can, they can be, but no, those women who are supporting all of this do so because they find their power in the men that they
Uh-huh.
associate themselves with. So they get
Yeah,
their power through that patriarchal lineage. I'll
yeah,
put
yeah,
it that
yeah.
way.
They're
Whereas if women
opportunists.
become the power and
Yeah.
then, you know,
So
make these
women
decisions about how to
being,
treat other
yeah,
human
women
beings, women are
being
more inclined to
human,
treat them kindly,
women
right?
being human, when are they just going to turn around and just start being the new men? I don't
Sorry.
think we need to focus on one sex or the other. I think that's regressive. It's just going to end the same way that it is now. right? It's just going to take another couple hundred years for it to flip it back around again. And then it's just going to be a power struggle back and forth, pendulum swing, pendulum swing.
Right.
We got to figure out the next step. We got to figure out
The
something that's
balance.
beyond dividing amongst gender or race or whatever, right?
Right. Well, here's what I wanted to say about though.
Mm.
As a general rule, and so I'm going to defend this woman idea.
Okay.
As a general rule, women look at balance. They're not looking to put men down. They're just looking to create balance because we have sons as well as daughters,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes. Well,
We,
but don't men also have daughters as well as sons?
well, they do.
Yes.
But if they, and I'm not talking all men, I'm married to a fabulous man. I think you're incredible, John. I love you so much. So I'm not talking about all men,
Well, I understand.
but we are seeing a lot of misogyny these days, a lot of it.
Yes. Well,
I mean, I think it's always
death
been there,
throes.
but yes, but now we're sort of in this where the misogyny is coming oozing out because there is
Yeah.
a fear of losing power. And there
Well, yeah.
are women who are being more autonomous,
Yeah.
right? So you're right. Men have daughters as well as sons,
Mhm.
but they do view daughters, and this is a very generalizing statement. This is not
Mhm.
blanket for every individual.
Yes, I understand.
They view their daughters more as something to protect,
Yeah.
and they view them the way they view the women in their lives,
Mhm.
often more as objects than people. Right? I mean, there have even been studies where when men listen to women's voices, the part of their brain that recognizes music lights up. Whereas
Mhm.
they listen to a man's voice, the part of their brain that registers language lights up,
Hmm.
which is a really interesting study. So,
It is interesting. It's interesting.
yeah. So, I don't know. Obviously, women don't need to take over the world. I think balance,
Mhm.
however, if
Yeah.
we had half women
Yeah.
as leaders
No, I
and
definitely
half
think
as
we should.
men,
I think we should. I think it should probably be balanced half and half,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
50% of the population, more or less. So,
right.
of course.
But women are far less likely to send their children into war. They're far less likely to do things that are like purposefully traumatizing,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
they
Well,
carry that over to the adults in their lives as a general rule as well. As women age, their children become adults,
right. Right.
and so they feel the same way I find about it. But that's just my personal think women will save the world.
Well, I definitely think that having more women in places of power will help for sure.
Yeah,
Definitely. I think
yeah,
just having more regular people in these places of power would help. Like
yeah.
a career
Yes,
politician is just a bad idea. The-
yes,
Politics should not be a career. Like that means you're going into it for money and
yeah,
probably power or fame or something, right?
right,
And that should not be what government is about. Like
right,
it's supposed to be a civic role where you're trying to make the place where you live a better place and protect the people who live there and do what the general population wants to be done, right? That's what
yeah,
governments are supposed to do. They're not
yeah,
supposed to tell you how to live your life. They're supposed to be
right,
there to support you. That's why we got together. We got together to make these governments to protect ourselves from others who would do us harm, to establish rules of law so that we can have general rules that we agree upon, right? To kind of prevent us from
right,
hurting each other, because that's the ultimate goal is to not hurt each other.
right. And to provide services like roads and
Right,
highways and post offices and
right,
things that are not meant to be money makers for the government, but are
right.
meant to support the system.
Exactly. Utilities.
Right,
Right?
right,
And so, I mean, that's not how it always was. We didn't have these nice governments that are run by the people for the people. Before we had kings and
right,
queens and things and
right,
tribal leaders, and then we killed them all because we didn't like that system. We didn't like it enough that we were willing to kill them, right? Look at the French
right,
Revolution. a lot of respect for the French and how they treat their royalty. So like it took us a long time to kind of build up these nice systems that we have, and now we're just letting basically the royalty of today subvert our systems, and
Yeah.
we need to take it back.
Yes, but unfortunately, so often that happens with violence. And
Yes,
I would so love for it not to happen that way.
I
Is
agree.
violence the worst possible thing to happen? Maybe not.
Yeah, no, maybe
I
not.
mean,
Because look, I
as a
mean,
mother though, I don't
because
want
consider
it.
Guantanamo, right? It's maybe
Right.
not super violent, but it's going to be super traumatizing.
Exactly. Well, but with Guantanamo, we know there was also violence and there
Yes, there
was
was
torture.
definitely. Yes, 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 yes.
Torture I see as violence. And
Again,
so,
but still, I think though we can't really conflate the two Guantanamos as we are now kind of calling these two different ideas kind of under the same umbrella here, right? We had the terrorists who they were just kind of really out to kill us, right? That's what they were
yeah,
going for. And so we try to put those people into there. But now these are just people that we're sending now
people.
to the same place, although slightly different situation. I don't think they're going to be in the same like solitary confinement type cells, right? We're going to have 30,000 beds. Like there's
Right.
probably
They
going to
want to
be
put,
some shared spaces and
well,
stuff.
they talked about tents. They talked about putting them in tents.
Okay, so this is a very different situation. I
Yeah.
I see prison riot happening, and all the soldiers being probably killed or something, or
Whew.
or some type of escape, and then they're just gonna flood into Cuba. I think something
Well,
like this might happen.
they're gonna have to man it with more people than they currently have there. I mean, they've
Yeah,
got, I think, 15 prisoners or something like that now.
right.
So they're gonna have to definitely ramp up the security and the manpower and
Yeah,
all
and
of that.
if it's not gonna be secure, if it is anything like a real prison and not just a temporary holding place until you're sent back to your country, I think they're gonna have problems.
Yeah,
Like,
I think so too.
yeah,
Because if they're truly sending criminals there,
yeah,
they're not going to suddenly become passive
no,
prisoners.
no, definitely not. Yeah,
So I
this is a
really,
bad
really, really
idea.
worry. It's
This is
such
a
a
really
bad
bad idea.
idea.
There's
Oh
nothing
my
good about
gosh.
this. We need to
Well,
just give it
John,
back to Cuba and be like, okay, that part is behind us. We're not going back to that.
right, right. I feel that's the case. I mean, like, I don't think we will give it back to Cuba. Don't get me wrong. I don't think we're anywhere near that because we're also threatening
Well, not with
to
Trump,
invade Panama.
certainly. Yeah, not with Trump.
Right.
I do not see it happening under Trump, but I would like to see it happen at some point in the not so distant future. Like we
Yeah.
need to really get our what? Our what's the word? Our self-respect back. Like regain our morals, take back our
Yeah.
character and just kind of be good people again.
I think that's going to be hard. I feel like there are so many people who are supporting anything he does.
Yeah, oh yes. Well, they're brainwashed. It's like a cult of
So,
personality.
and this may be a topic that we actually address another time. I agree. There is definitely a cult aspect to this. And I have been reading up on cults quite a bit just because
Mhm.
I'm curious, can we survive another Trump
Yeah.
presidency? And he's certainly already looking at a third term, which I
Well,
would be just,
that's never gonna
I don't
happen.
think he'll live that long, but
Well, and
um,
probably not, but no, I can't imagine them changing the law to extend presidential terms. This has been since
but they've already had somebody present,
the
a bill.
very close to the beginning of the United States government. We have had term limits on the president. So, yeah, if that changes, it's done for the United States.
I
Yeah.
do agree because
You'll
if they
you'll
bump
need to
it to
get
a third, they'll bump
you'll
it
need to
to a
get out.
fourth, they'll bump it, yeah,
Exactly.
and then we'll have true legitimate
Yeah,
dictators.
yeah. At that point, it's time to pack your bags and run. There are better places in the world. Oh
Yeah,
yes. Oh
we talked
yes.
about this a little bit afterwards last time, and
Yes.
but there are things that hold people to a nation. There's
Yeah.
family, there's
Yeah.
property, There's,
Yeah.
all kinds of things that hold people to where they're from. It's hard to
Stop being
break
so
those ties.
sentimental. Think of your life. Think of your happiness.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Find a better place.
family's the hard one. Yeah, and this may be well, you have a daughter, so you're would you ever leave Japan if your daughter's still there?
Not if she's still here. No, I wouldn't want to leave anyway. I
Well, I
would
know you like
like
Japan,
her
but
to
say
stay
things
here
went
with
bad.
me.
Say things went all kinds of bad in Japan and all kinds
Oh,
of wrong,
I would leave in a heartbeat. No problem.
and leave your daughter behind.
Oh, no, 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 no. I'll take her with me.
That's my point. But what if she's an adult and she wants to stay?
Oh, well, if she wants to stay, then that's her own decision. I think I'm raising her to have more sense than to stay in a place simply because you like it while it was good and now it's terrible. So let's stay in the terribleness. No,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not logical.
Keep your fingers crossed. Children never do what you think they're going to do, John.
Well, no, 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 no. Yes, I'm sure of that. But
I appreciate you talking about this topic with me today. I don't know that, of course, as I often say, that there's solutions that we can individually take that will have a big impact, but as a group,
yeah.
what we do and what we say and how we address these issues can have an impact.
Well,
And I
so they
hope that
say
there's an
that
uproar.
I've heard of, yeah, enough people write a letter to their congressperson or senator or whatever, and then this sometimes does have an effect. I think in this particular administration, it might have more of an effect if you have more money in the bank than if you don't. But you can try it out. Like, tell them what you think.
But I find that those who have all that money in the bank are actually supplicating to
Oh,
this current
yes.
president.
But
And
not all of them.
so
But not all of them.
not all, not
Yeah.
all. And I'm one of those people who's actually looking up the politics of all the places where I do business.
Yeah.
And I am trying not to support those who have supported this particular administration.
Yeah, I mean the sword cuts both ways, right? If you're going to
It
use your
does.
political affiliation to reinforce your image, well, that
Right.
same reinforcement can also injure your image. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
we all
And
have
so,
the
I mean,
right to spend our money the way we want to.
yeah, I prefer companies that don't contribute to politicians at all.
Yes,
But if they
those are the
do,
best companies. If they do, they
right,
typically contribute to both sides more or less equally.
right,
They
right.
hedge their
And
bets.
they hedge their bets
Yeah,
because a bought politician is a bought politician. It doesn't matter
exactly.
which side of the aisle they're on.
Yeah, and it's basically you're paying both sides, and then both sides are kind of work for you. And if you only get one side, well, then it just costs twice as much as what you actually paid them, but the effect is more or less the same.
Well, the only other thing that I can think of is I would demand some kind of oversight
Mm.
of Guantanamo Bay while we are holding
Yeah, so I was
people
thinking
there.
like a non-government agency of some sort, but that's precisely the types of people that they would never allow in.
Well, it's precisely what they're trying to break down. I mean, that's the reason
Yeah,
they got rid of the IGs. They
right.
don't, they want to be able to do whatever they want without anybody looking over their
Knowing about
shoulder
it.
and having
Yeah,
oversight.
yeah.
And so that as well is a very
They want
scary,
to operate in secrecy, like the
right?
devil.
Right. And this is not our topic. We need to maybe do this as a separate topic. Like
Yeah,
I said, so many things have happened that
yeah.
it was hard to pick and choose. But I don't know if you've read that Elon Musk has just taken
Mhm.
over Treasury Department, has gone in, has been downloading sensitive information. He's come in with his own people, gotten all of the Treasury Department off of their computers, off of their systems, and has
Mhm.
gone in and has started to take it in essence.
I
It
haven't heard
is
of this, but
so scary. I mean,
sounds
it's
so
got our
weird.
social security numbers. It's got all of our personal information,
Well,
all
I'm
of this
sure that
secure
there are some
information.
hackers that will get their hands on it and then put it on the dark web.
It's really
I'm
scary,
sure.
John. I do not know what's happening in our country, and it's going so bad so fast that
Yeah.
I hope it will wake up even those who have supported this administration. I'm hoping
Yeah.
they'll go, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. Wait a minute. Not even looking at the cost of groceries. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. You
Yeah.
know, that was, I worked at that department.
I think
I
it's gonna have
wasn't
to get
supposed to
pretty
get
bad,
fired.
but
And he's also doing things like promising, severance packages, which he has no
right.
money to
Well,
give.
that's a Musk thing, I think, right?
I
That's what
think
he
you're right.
did. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And
When he
the
bought
wording for it is almost
Twitter.
straight out of, yes, his
Yes.
actions with Twitter.
Yeah.
So we really do have an unelected person running the country at this point.
But we always
Truly.
do. We always do. All the political appointees, like the president appoints to oversee all the different things. Like none of these people are elected. You would think like the Secretary of State would need to be like an elected position, perhaps, but it's not.
Right. But as a general rule, the buck still stops with the president who is elected.
Right. Right.
He has cabinet members
Well,
to
so it still
advise him
is,
because
right?
he doesn't know everything about everything, right? And
Right.
so these cabinet members are there to advise, to
Yeah.
be experts in the field. Oh my gosh.
Well, everything that Trump's
That's
that's
another thing.
happening, everything that's happening, even with Elon Musk, is approved by Trump. So otherwise, it wouldn't
I,
happen.
I don't know about that, John. I'm not
Well,
sure
as
Trump
you
has a
said,
clue what's even going on.
the buck stops with the president, right? He's the elected official, and so that's still the case. So maybe he's not paying attention, and maybe he doesn't even care. But if there's trouble, then it's going to fall on Trump. He's the elected
Yes.
official.
Yes.
These are his
Yes.
appointees.
It should. It should.
Yeah, he's slippery
But
though.
Teflon Don,
Yeah.
nothing sticks.
Yes.
So I don't know. I know we've gotten off on some tangents that have nothing to do with our original topic. I
Yeah.
just have such strong memory of the child separation that occurred in his first term. And I see
Mhm.
Guantanamo Bay as being a repeat of that history.
Yes, it probably will be. It's
And,
unfortunate.
I might attach a clip of it to the end of this, but
Mhm.
it was tape of children crying
Yeah.
that changed the tide the first time around,
Yeah.
because the Republican Party said, we're going to lose the midterms
Well, they always say
if
think of the
we don't.
children, right?
Right.
Like this is the very conservative thing to say is, "Oh, think of the children," and they approve a lot of what I would say is terrible stuff because they say think of the children, think of the children, and apparently you don't think about anybody else, and but then it's never true, right? They don't think of the children. They don't want to feed the starving children. They don't want to keep the children who are U.S. citizens with their families, even though there should be, I believe there are, visas for the parents of U.S. citizens, right?
Right.
So they don't really care about children.
No, they're pro birth, but not pro life.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm just hoping that there will be somebody, if they do put women and children at Guantanamo, which I think they will, which is really scary if they're also putting violent criminals there,
Yes. Right. So
right?
which is it? So exactly. There's contradicting stories already.
Right.
Like it's just been announced and yet they're already contradicting themselves. So
Because they come up with these ideas and they publicize them without any plan, which
right.
is what happened the first time. They
Yeah.
had no plan for what to do with these children, how to track them to the people they belonged to.
Yeah.
And so we still have something like 1,300 plus children who've never been reunited with their families
Mm.
after all these years.
Like
So they're doing the
where
same
are
thing
they?
again.
Where are
They're
the
going,
kids?
they're in different places. Some of them some of them have become adults at this point,
Right.
right? And are, you know, basically starting to become self-sufficient.
Yeah.
They put them into group homes. They adopted them out. They put
Mhm.
them into, other, into the system, essentially. They went into the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
1,300 that were never reunited. So that's still ongoing trauma for them. But even the children who were taken and were reunited are still coping with the trauma that they experienced because of that. And the trauma was the point. That's the part that's so critical to me, is that John Kelly said, we did it in order to really hurt them so that other people would be deterred. And that's a level of evil that I really cannot stomach.
Yeah, well, it's a complete disregard for human life and the sanctity of humanity.
If you break your children while they're young, you gotta expect broken adults later.
Of course. I mean, you're basically creating the criminals that you're trying to get rid of.
Right. Exactly. Well, on that positive note,
Yeah.
let's do what we can to
Let's try to
speak
be
to
better
our
people. Yes.
yeah.
Talk to your elected officials. Just try to be a little bit
Exactly.
better every day.
Yeah. And let's keep an eye on what's going on. Don't put your head in the sand. I mean,
Yes.
by all means, do what you need to do for your personal welfare, for sure. But pick a topic if that's what you can do. Don't necessarily dwell on all the things that are happening. Pick one, focus on it, and see if you can work towards that issue. I think that's a good way. If we break this up, we've got millions of Americans who don't support these activities. And that's plenty of people to divide and conquer all of these issues that are being thrown at us
I would
all
say
at
it's probably more
once.
than half, right? Probably more
Yeah.
than half.
Yes. I
Because
think
there's
it
going
is
to
more
be
than half.
some people who voted for Trump who are going to say, okay, that's maybe a
Enough
little
is
too
enough.
far. Yeah, that's
Right.
not exactly what I was going for. It's going to be inevitable. And so there's definitely more than half of people who are going to be unhappy. So if you just try to do something,
Right.
we should find success.
I hope so. I have hope for humanity, John.
I do too. I really do.
Okay. On that note, then, till next time.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.